Well, it is the end of day 7 here in Israel and had a fun day today. We hiked over 8 miles and got a lot of sun today and a great time. So, let me show you some of the things we did. The first thing we did was we went to Masada, and Masada is an incredible site. We started in Jerusalem here and then just headed down along the Dead Sea down to Masada, and we had to get in a little boxcar to go up to the site. And the site itself is just unbelievable to be on top of this fortress. And so this Masada was built by King Herod the Great sometime between 25 BC and his death in 4 BC. And so this was kind of a safe house for Herod in case things got dicey politically, and also a winter home for him because this area would be very hot in the summer, but it would be a cool 70 degrees in the winter. This is a model of the site that he built, and so his residence was on the top floor here, and then these bottom two were for entertaining. This is the ruins today of Masada, and so there's a huge bathhouse here, all kinds of rooms going through here, um, buildings over here. This is a guest house that's massive, multi floors. It just is incredibly impressive, more than I can give justice to by describing. I walked through one of the facilities over here in the guest house, which again is multiple stories, but just to show you a quick video of walking through some of the rooms, it just goes room after room after room. The black line that you see is where they've added above what the original ruins were, just to give it a better feel for what it looked like at the time. But it's just spectacular. Some of the rooms will still have the mosaic floors. This goes back to, of course, 2,000 years. And so the big story of Masada and why Israel's poured so much money into this was what happened in 72 AD. And so there was a revolt amongst the Jewish people trying to revolt against the Romans. And so the last resistance ended up on top of Masada. There were 967 people on the top of Masada, and the Romans decided that they had had enough of this, so they surround this fortress of Masada with 15,000 troops. They build a wall around this whole facility 2 miles in length, and then once they figure out that they can't just wait them out in terms of food, that they have plenty of food, the Romans start to build a ramp up to Masada to overtake the city. And so this is what that ramp looks like today, but it was much bigger at the time. So here's a sketch or a diagram of what they had to do. They had to fill this in with all this dirt, and then they built a 60-foot wooden siege wall tower so that they would have the upper hand and could try to knock down the walls. They were catapulting rocks the size of basketballs. Here's an example of some of those rocks. This is at Masada. This is an illustration of what this looked like. So this is the siege wall where they're overtaking, as you know, incredible fighting going on. And so it got to a point where it was evident that the Romans were a day or less away from overtaking the city. And so all 967 people committed suicide rather than be taken by the Romans. So, you know, you have families here. So the husbands killed their kids and their wives and then themselves and cast lots for who the last person would be to burn the city down and then take his own life, because they would rather die than to be subject to the abuse and slavery that they knew would come at the hands of the Romans. And so, still to this day, at Masada, they will do military type of uh, oh, commissionings. They'll have jets that'll go over and salute. And they have a phrase that's kind of like our "Remember the Alamo," but it's never again will we allow a foreign empire to put us in the position that the Romans did at Masada. And that type of Masada thinking very much plays into today and their position against Iran getting a nuclear weapon. So after we finished touring the top of Masada, we walked all the way down. I believe it was over 2 miles down the snake path here, and just incredible sights walking down. And so after finishing in Masada, we went up to En Gedi. En Gedi is the site where David was on the run from King Saul. And so the story goes that David and his mighty men were hiding in the back of one of the caves, and King Saul went into that same cave to relieve himself. And so takes off his robes and is taking care of business. And David, even though his friends encourage him that God has given Saul into our hands, he refuses to take Saul's life and to kill God's anointed. And so he cuts off a piece of Saul's robe. And then when Saul is kind of out of harm's way, I guess, he confronts Saul with, "I could have killed you, but I didn't." And Saul more or less repents and says, "David, you're the better man," and he goes back home. So En Gedi is now a national park, and it's just beautiful natural water coming through the rocks all throughout this. A couple of different waterfalls. It's a beautiful sight. A lot of people there. And so after finishing it in Gedi, we went right up into this area, somewhere up in here, the Qumran site, which is where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And so that was interesting, getting some of the background on the Essenes that lived in this area of Qumran. Amongst the things that were found were Old Testament passages, commentary on how scholars would have read, how they would have applied the law and maybe added to the law, and then specific rules for the people who lived in the Essene community that were very specific and very particular. And so this site is really important, or the Dead Sea Scrolls are really important, because the most recent full manuscript of the Old Testament that we have is sometime in the 1000, 1090 range, somewhere in there. Whereas I believe that the Dead Sea Scrolls date back to 200 BC. And while not all of the Old Testament is found, a great portion of it is, which just really corroborates with manuscript evidence the validity of the Old Testament. So this is cave number 4, one of the caves where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. Just kind of an interesting anecdote. Amongst the rules that the Essenes had was a rule that they could not defecate on the Sabbath because that was considered work. So I thought that one was pretty interesting. So they would literally have to plan their whole consumption of food around making sure they wouldn't violate the Sabbath by defecating. So how's that for a law? And then the final thing we did was we went a short distance from Qumran up to the Dead Sea. Got to get in the Dead Sea, which was pretty cool. Down by the Dead Sea, right before the area starts where you can go in, they have a bar, the lowest bar in the world. So it's negative 1,300 feet below sea level, or 418 meters below sea level. And so I didn't get a picture of me in the Dead Sea, just there's nobody to take the picture, but I got a picture of, this is a couple that's on the group with us, Scott and Kelly, but you literally just sit back like you're sitting in a chair and you float. So the salt content in the Dead Sea is 33% as compared to 3 to 4% in the ocean, which is why you float like that. So very full day. We got back to the hotel and they have a big concert festival night set up in Jerusalem. So this is the view right outside our hotel of one of the bands. There's 6 bands around the city that are playing. In fact, I can hear them in the background right now playing. So fun day. We actually have more or less the day off tomorrow to do sightseeing on our own. It'd be fun to kind of have a bit of a down day before we go to Galilee, which will be neat to tour that part of the country. So I will keep you posted.